as we welcome in our guy, Tom Murphy, into the program. And on Trusting the Process, Tom shared how he met his significant other. It's a really good story. If you haven't listened to that episode, I highly encourage you to. Tom, big news of the day, Eric Musselman's contract stipulations revealed. I know we got a chance to speak with both him and Hunter yesterday. Any of the facts and figures that are incorporated in this contract that stood out to you yesterday?
No, not really, other than, it gets his salary up to, I think it was number 7 in the country. So, top 10 in the country. That's well compensated and reflective of Arkansas's position in the final standings. And I think it's the incentive-laden part is good for Eric Musselman, that, the more you achieve and things like that, the more your pay can go. So, get a replacement for Corey Williams in there and start getting the roster in place. And before you know it, next year will roll around and there'll be high expectations. Even though they lost a good chunk of their roster, people have trust in what they feel like is his building process and the way he coaches, the way they scout, the way they incentivize players. So, it's things are looking up. I did an interview last night with a Sirius XM show. Jacob Hester was on, and a guy named Chris something from out in L.A. And the 1,000-mile away perspective was, wow, look at Arkansas athletics. Really on the upswing, and people think Sam Pittman's building something nice. Otherwise, you got a bunch of teams in the top 10, and I told them, they've done a really nice job at putting the entire sports department, making them contenders in a way. So, and this is just, I guess, the lead example of Arkansas athletics being maybe back in the national spotlight.
Tommy and I were kicking around where Arkansas ranks as a job earlier. You think about some of the blue blood schools, UCLA, Kansas, Kentucky, Duke, North Carolina. You mentioned Muss's compensation being top 10, being third in the SEC behind Cal and Rick Barnes. I mean, when you look about that, I think Arkansas is probably the second best job in the SEC behind Kentucky. Are there many other jobs outside the ones I just listed that you think are a better basketball job than Arkansas?
No, I mean, there's that clear first tier, teams with multiple national championships. I'd throw Michigan in there, and there's a few others.
It's a good one.
But Arkansas, when you combine the quality of life here with the resources at your at hand for you, the fan base, the practice facility, Walton Arena, it's on up there in years now, but it's still a very high quality facility, and I think there's going to start being improvements to it. Then, you got yourself a nice job here at Arkansas, and I'll tell you what's going to be fascinating in the coming years. Can Arkansas do like they did under Nolan Richardson, where the Arkansas-Kentucky rivalry was hot? Right when Arkansas joined the conference, it was hot. And Kentucky, Florida has done that in recent years. They've risen up. Tennessee to a small extent, Auburn a little bit. But Arkansas can be the one that, creates that East-West thing in the SEC, and that would be really cool.
One of the things that stood out to me just looking over the terms of the contract was the coach's payment, what it would cost Eric Musselman to leave if he chose, because you look at the differences in the original document versus this new extended document. And this was one of the things that caught my attention, because the dates of the end of April, which are key, kind of takes a coach off the market till the end of the month of April, has now been changed to the last game. The end of the program game of the 2021-2022 season is $7.5 million, which, Tom, to me basically means that number is invalid. Doesn't mean much, because the day after your last game it drops to $2 million. Anything else stand out to you? Because I thought that was a very interesting point in this agreement.
Yeah, it really was, and it's the one. It's one that when you see the number, you go, "Whoa, okay."
Yeah,
it's 1 year, right? So this coming year, up until the end of the season, it's a very prohibitive buyout. But right after, it drops to 2 something, right?
Yeah, so it's about 11. It's about 11 months or so of that number. Yeah, it drops to $2 million the day after the last game.
Yeah, then it's not so prohibitive for if a team really, was really, really eager. But, he got himself that kind of leverage, honestly, and just something that Razorbacks are going to have to deal with. But just from the sound of it, what they have going here, their family is really engaged, and this is in the age of COVID, too, that their family's really engaged. Social media really plays a big part in it. Danielle and Mariah seem to be really happy, and the fan base is really in love with the Musselman. So hopefully it's a marriage that lasts many years, and Arkansas basketball is super competitive during this time.
I thought when he just said that, I thought though he was talking about Eric and Danielle. I didn't. I was like, I hope so too. I didn't bridge. It took me a while. I'm still waking up, Tom.
70% for the school. The school chose to terminate his contract. That falls in line with really some of the other deals that Hunter Yurachek has put into place. So a 70% buyout from that end. What has to happen? Where does this program have to be? Because I'm still not of the belief that we'll look up in 6 or 7 years from now, Eric Musselman's going to be your head coach. So what has to happen? Is it Final Four, multiple Final Fours? Is it a national title? What in your mind has to happen for this to be the last stop of Eric Musselman's coaching career? Because I'm not to that point of believing that yet.
Well, first of all, if you look at the landscape in the SEC in college basketball, it's hard to keep your program in that top 20 realm year after year. I mean, Kentucky's done a decent job of it, but then they fell off the face this year. Tennessee's had up years, won the conference a couple years ago, and then this year they were just really a bust when it came to tournament time. Florida has had its ups and downs. So we think, based on the 2-year blueprint we have in front of us, that Eric Musselman can attract transfers in here, because you have to build that way now, can attract the talented freshmen in our own state, which, this class, this is going to be the core, the nucleus of this class now, Jalen Williams, Devo Davis, and Kalen Robinson. And then put them together on the court into a team that plays smart basketball. They need more shooters this year, no question. And so we think, given that formula, that they have a way to get in the top 20 in the coming years. Stay in the top 20, make solid runs, and I think the fans are really thirsty for a Final Four appearance in the next few years. Yeah. If they have a dynamic scorer like a Moses, and then just shoot the three better. I thought that was a really lacking part in the NCAAs, was being a real threat as a 3-point shooting team. It almost cost them in the Oral Roberts game.
Tom, if you mentioned a Final Four potentially, if they do make the Final Four in New Orleans next year, I'll make sure that you get to go instead of Bob. I'll talk to Matt Jones about that. We're talking with Tom Murphy on the Morning Rush. Tom, coaching news at Arkansas. Looks like Corey Williams headed to Texas Tech. Bob asked him about that yesterday, and Eric talked about that he's been a good part of this program. But when you look at the guys on staff, whether it's Earl Boykins, Coach Ruda, Hayes Myers, Pat Ackerman, Michael Musselman, do you think Eric stays within his staff, or do you think he goes outside and still tries to go after someone in his circle to replace Coach Williams?
That's a great question, and I do not know the answer to it. Well, while a lot of that was going on yesterday, Bob and others on our staff making calls and checking out things, I was like writing a football story and helping out with the Zoom transcription with Sam at 1:30, and then with Musselman and Hunter Yurachek. I don't know the answer to that, but I do know that it will be an attractive position. A program, as we've just gone through, it's on the upswing and building and has a lot of support. So I'm sure there'll be no lack of qualified applicants to do that. And he's got himself a team here. The way they break down video, the way they scout, the social media part of it, it's like a small army of people, that's pushed the program forward.
Tom Murphy with us here on the Morning Rush. Let's shift gears, because this is our last visit before the red-white game on Saturday, and I know that's going to be in the crosshairs for most of our listeners coming up. What are you expecting to see? I know a lot of people have focused on KJ Jefferson and this quarterback battle that doesn't seem to be much of a competition at this point. What are the 2 or 3 things, Tom, that we really need to be focused in on when observing Saturday's practice?
Well, the parts of practice that we've seen, the defense is having the upper hand, and it's largely led by the secondary. They just seem to be on point. One of the first passes we saw in a team period the other day, KJ threw it downfield. I can't remember who the intended receiver was, but the defense was all over him. I mean, I think there were 2 DBs on the play. The pass got tipped, and Grant Morgan, who had dropped back into coverage, it was like a double tip pass, and Grant Morgan was right there, and he picked it off. It's just like they're swarming. So I'd like to see some of the offensive skill guys, make individual plays. I'd like to see the O-linemen win some one-on-one battles and pass protect well to give KJ some time. I'd like to see that when the quarterbacks run the ball, it looks like there's room to run, because they're not going to be tackled and things like that. But I want to see Traylon Burks and Trey Knox, Mike Woods make some plays in the pass game. And then I'd like to see that there's a pass rush. They're going to go ones-on-ones, Sam Pittman said yesterday. So does the defense dominate in that scenario? What we've seen so far in the spring would say yes. So under this spotlight, I'd like to see KJ operate the offense and have, close to 60, maybe a little higher completion percentage, and move the ball a little bit. Because, the defense, the secondary, they're going to be in on some plays. And I'd like to see, Sam said yesterday, the special teams have made gains this spring. I'd like to see that because it's hard to me, it's until you get into a game against another opponent, it's hard to say, oh, yeah, we're better on special teams. Because those block punts early last season, those were costly. And they've got to avoid that kind of stuff and be a better return team. There's a lot to look for, y'all.
With a new position coach and Kenny Guyton at wide receiver, will this be the year that Trey Knox finally kind of breaks out a little bit and is a great number 2 or a great complement to Traylon Burks?
Yeah, I would sure hope so. I mean, Mike Woods and Traylon Burks are, that duo ranks among the best in the whole SEC. Let's just get that out of the way. But Trey Knox clearly had a drop-off, and you guys probably saw the quotes from last week. What happened to him? Well, he was ill when, camp really got started. He got behind. He felt like he was thinking too much. What a great kid. So many kids in that environment or that scenario would have looked into the transfer portal and maybe left here. But he said he loves his teammates. He wants to see Arkansas football rise back up. I think he's one of the most engaging, fun kids on this roster. I'd like to see him, get numbers comparable to his freshman year and better. He's just got to get better separation. I mean, he doesn't possess breakaway speed, so his route running has got to be more precise. He's just got to be on the same page. You could tell after that drop 2-point conversion in the Auburn game, you could just tell that his confidence was down. And Felipe, I don't think, looked his way a ton because he didn't feel like there'd be separation. So Trey's got to do that.
Tom, appreciate it as always, buddy. We will talk on Monday and get a little recap of the spring game, okay?
Sounds good. Y'all have a great weekend.